The Citizen Mike Show. News. Commentary. Interviews. The Citizen Mike Show starts now.
Welcome to the Citizen Mike Show. Thanks for tuning in. We do appreciate it. My name is Mike Brodinski. On my right, Christopher K. Shortell, a Republican on the Wallingford Town Council, and our special guest in the studio tonight. And we're excited to have back Jason Zandri. Jason, congratulations on your re-election to the Town Council.
Thanks, and thanks for having me back on the show.
Yeah, we were been looking forward to that for a long time. I think we planned this back in like 4 months ago.
Yeah, we planned it like 4 months ago, and I had to book some time off to make sure I didn't get sent somewhere.
Right.
And interestingly, I got to go to Bristol tomorrow, but at least that's in state.
Yeah, right. Well, thanks for making time for us. You guys had a busy night last night at the Town Council meeting. One of the issues that came up was the possibility of reforming or reconstituting the Wallingford Energy Conservation Commission. This was brought forward by Gina Morgenstein, and the Wallingford Energy Conservation Commission has a bit of a history. It was started back in 2008. My understanding from the comments that it was somewhat active sort of in the waning years of 2013, 2014, and then it was sort of discontinued. The council didn't reinstate it again, so it was out of business by operation of law, but by the council not reappointing it. Give us your report, your short form report on that discussion last night. Then we'll go to Chris to see if he's got any additional details, and then we'll sort of round table what was going on last night.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think the way that this really came about is, Councilor Morgenstein put it on the agenda with a request to not only reinstitute the commission, but also submit some names forward for consideration to add them, almost basically, let's do this and add them all in one shot. And, through the discussion on top of, Ben Martin and, Mary Mashinsky came a little bit later, kind of outlining all the good things they had done. They basically had indicated the only reason it stopped is it became a commission of two in the end because people dropped off, they didn't have as much time and so on and so forth. That's the only reason it ended. If people were able to stay active, it probably would have been regularly approached to continue and go forward, and it only ended because of that. And now that there's new people that were interested, they wanted to restart it.
Okay, and what was the rationale for that, and what's your assessment of the rationale?
Well, I think the rationale of why did it get put on? Well, because I feel like the basically Ben and Mary initiated the discussion, I'm sure, with
Ben Martin
and Mary Mashinsky.
Okay.
And Gina Morgan. I'm sure there was a couple of other people that say, hey, we used to do this. I think they kind of got together again and said it'd be great to restart this. We did a lot of good things before. Let's do it formally again, as part of a commission from the council, and let's see about it. And really, the steps to do that is to put it on the agenda and discuss.
What's the bottom line? How did it end up?
Well, I mean, the discussion happened. I think it was a lot of good discussion. I think a lot of points were reviewed, which is important too. I think there was a little bit of sentiment of, do we really need it? Because and whether we do or don't is always a speculative discussion, but we had it before and it wasn't a big issue and it wasn't a big confusion to people. So if we had it before and there's people that want to do it again, why not? But I think there was some concern about the fact that we're going to bring it up and appoint people kind of on the fly all together. So a piece of the motion got backed off and said, okay, fine. That's a good discussion point. It's a good argument piece. So we're trying to restart it and appoint people. Maybe we just restart it and then come back to it. But as it was at the end, it ended up getting tabled. So really, we're just at the come back to it point.
The tabling was by a divided vote. What was the rationale for yes to table, no to table? Where did you stand? And then we'll have Chris jump in on
Sure.
that.
So I want to say Councilor Laffin made the motion, and I believe
Motion to
Marone-
table?
Motion to table, and I believe Councilor Marone seconded it. And then, of course, at that point, the discussion stops because now we have a motion to table the entire thing. So the vote comes up, and it went pretty much party line. Craig Fishbein wasn't there. Went party line, so it went 5-3 to table. My thought process was because the actual motion was to establish and not appoint. Let's just agree that we're going to establish it, and we'll come back and talk about it. And we never got that far.
Okay.
So that was why I voted. The whole point of tabling, I'm like, no, I didn't want to table. I would have preferred to keep talking about it and see if we couldn't get it off the ground rather than have it get stalled. Because my concern always is, once you table something, unless the person is going to bring it back and we're going to have an open discussion about it again, you run the risk that maybe it doesn't get talked about or it just gets squashed, or there's bigger fish to fry at the time.
Chris, what can you add to that detail? You were sitting, what, 6 seats away?
No,
Seven
no,
seats
We
away?
almost sit next.
Oh, you almost sit
seats.
next to each
I
other.
wish we sat. No offense, Gina. I wish we sat next to each other.
We wouldn't stop talking.
Yeah, we wouldn't stop talking. Yeah, I mean, I was all for this, and they killed it. No, it's what Jason described in terms of. Let me start at the end and work my way back a little bit.
Sure.
In terms of the rationale, I voted to table, which actually was a vote. I viewed it as a vote supportive of what they were trying to do, and let me explain that. I was not supportive coming into it. This was one of those meetings where I came into it not really understanding how what they were going to do was different from the PUC, certainly not understanding, how these names, and no offense to anybody, but it was like Gina came with a bunch of Democrats for this committee. That was just my perception of it, and I was trying to get over that. And then as Ben Martin presented, he's very passionate, and I will say he persuaded me through the course of his presentation that this was possibly not a bad thing.
Possibly not a bad thing. All right, we got a couple of hedges in there.
Well, hold on.
But finish up.
So
Yeah.
at the end, though, it was clear. I said, though, and I said, I'm not. If there's a vote on this tonight, the way it's represented, I'm voting no because I wasn't for it the way it came to us. I wanted to understand who gets to be on the committee. They were like, "Oh, we'll take anyone. We can take 100 people." I'm like, "You don't want 100 people on a committee." So I think there had to be guardrails around who gets on it. How do we get equal representation? And then Councilor Laffin, I thought, really did a good job of articulating what's the scope of the committee, what should the scope be, things like that. Let's write that down. Let's get a piece of paper that just outlines, and then let's figure it out. So anyway, I said if there's an up and down vote as it's presented tonight, I'm voting no. When it came to table, I voted yes to table because I knew that if the motion to table failed, there would be an up and down vote on Gina's motion. That vote would fail, and it would die. It would be done that night. So I viewed table, and I understand your thing that there's a risk that if you table it, I think it does come back because I think we had a public discussion, and I think you had Councilor Marone was another councilor who I think, like me, if you watch his comments, started off kind of skeptical, but by the end, he was arguing with the mayor about it, and he was kind of swayed. And again, the motion to table came from Vice Chair Laffin, who of all people is very good at procedure, knew that if he was successful, it comes back. It doesn't die. So anyway, that's why I voted the way I voted, and I think it does come back.
So on the motion to table, we have a no vote, we have a yes vote, but both of you, and I'm intentionally overstating this to bait both of you are uncontrollably enthusiastic about, and I'll go to you first, Jason.
Sure you will.
Uncontrollably
Sure you will.
enthusiastic about the prospects of this Wallingford Energy Conservation Commission achieving great things, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, tell me why.
Well, because just because I feel like there's a place where if people individually want to find ways to conserve energy, be more green about things, this is a way to get people there. Like one of the big issues, especially from the conservative side of the aisle, is we're going to do a lot of these things. Overall, they're more expensive, and people like to treat it well because a town or a state or a business has got lots of money. They can throw extra money at it. But this is individuals. Like, I've got a little bit of extra money. I want to find out about insulating my attic better or cutting off drafts. And maybe I don't know where to go, but there are these people that are out there. And you think about, like, even to the mayor's point that there's this division within the elected division, they're not out in discussion groups. They're not out on Facebook circulating, hey, if you're looking for some good ideas, we have a little commission that you can talk to. The people that would be on that commission, they're the type of people that will get out there once a week, once a month, post something on Facebook, which will entice conversation and engagement. And I like that.
Okay. So, Chris, over to you. First of all, the mayor's point was, we don't need a commission. We're doing all the things that were mentioned by Ben Martin and the other presenters. We're doing it within departments. We have professionals doing it. It's their job. A lot of money is devoted to this. And so if measures need to be taken, we can do it. Isn't the solution to the problem Jason just outlined, exercising your legislative oversight powers over the PUC, is to bring them in, have a report on their conservation measures, and say, market this, guys. There is a home audit program. It's been in existence a long time. I've done it. I think, maybe a lot of people, watching the show have done it. So it's a matter of marketing something that's already in existence, not forming a new commission to do that. Your thoughts on that, and then Jason.
No.
Tell me.
Well, I think Jason hit it on the head. You have a group of people who are willing to take it to the next level. And
what's that next level?
Well, what he talked about, being an advocate, being an advocate, meeting people where they are. People
Get
like
your
us. And
home audited.
But I'm saying it's not just that. It's all sorts of things, and I think
that
it's more than what we can do as a council, or I think it augments all the things that are done today through the PUC and the council. And let me say, I'm going to answer your first question because you didn't repeat. You asked how excited we were about it, and you went to Councilor Zandri. Again, there's part of me that's I'm still hesitant about it, because a lot of what, they had Mark Deptula, who is the facilities director, I'm not sure of his exact title, for the Board of Ed. Yeah. And Mark cited all these things that he has done in terms of conservation with the school system. But part of it was he's done all of these things mostly in the absence of this committee existing. He did. Yeah,
his argument, if I may interrupt, and then I'm going to turn it back. Yeah. His argument was really in favor of not having a commission.
It was.
Because it's being done under the auspices of the Board of Ed and the PUC. So taking the substance of his comments, the head of building and grounds of the Board of Ed's, really, he didn't use these words, but he's saying we're doing it anyway.
But he said he would appreciate someone looking over his shoulder was the phrase he used.
Oh, really?
And I will say, when Ben Martin was asked, because people brought up the Coalition for Red Wallingford and Wallingford Center Inc. as examples, and Ben Martin someone asked him, why don't you just go that route? I may have asked, I don't remember. His response, which I thought was a really good response, was you could do that, but you have more clout. You get more people answer the phone more if you are if you have the endorsement of the council. So to go all the way back, if this is done, if this is done with just a specific scope, and there's mixed representation, which includes all the people that were there last night, I would be for it, because I don't want to get in the way of people who want to get involved, which I think was something Councilor Testa said.
Yeah.
Well, that's another issue.
Well, I don't want to get in the way. But I think that's where I would be for it that's I think the direction. It looks like the direction we're going.
Well, another good point too is, like, even though the mayor made a comment, I kind of sort of agree with it. Yeah, the PUC does it, but the PUC does it and it just sits there. So if you know to go there, they'll do it for you. But here's a group that'd be going out and advocating and say, gee, if you'd like this done, we'll liaise with you to the PUC, and we'll bring. They'll go out and actively advocate to do it, because they want the energy savings, as much as the homeowner does. Right. They really want to make that difference.
Right.
So the way I'm reading both of you, this is a marketing committee to market programs.
In a way.
Well, I'm trying to extract the core of your comments.
Raise awareness.
Programs we already have.
And they'll also they may go even farther. Like the PUC does certain things, and I'm sure they would come forward and say, listen, the PUC offers X, Y, and Z, but if you also want to take it to the next level, maybe certain things you can just do by hiring a subcontractor. You could go geothermal and do additional things to your house. I mean, they'll go beyond, I believe, what the PUC is charged with doing.
So as usually with a show, when we have a somewhat of a controversial subject, I am forced, sometimes against my will, to take the devil's advocate position, just to sort of draw out a greater truth. It's just the way it works. It's the Socratic method, I guess. I don't know. So my question, I'm going to try to put as much edge in this as I possibly can. And it's theatrical edge. Do you really believe, both of you, do you really believe that this committee and the makeup, and we'll go over the makeup of the proposed members, are really going to be satisfied limiting themselves to marketing a home audit program that already exists? That's what's driving them, and they're going to be satisfied with that?
No, I don't.
Because when I watched the meeting, I heard a lot more.
Yeah.
I heard a lot of comments that suggested that they were more interested in reducing a carbon footprint than they were in saving the town money. And I can see, therefore, why the mayor, the PUC, some of the more conservative members on the council would be very wary of this. Jason, your thoughts, and then Chris,
Yeah, no,
yours.
I agree with that sentiment. I think given a broad enough brush, they'll keep painting. They'll want to go farther out and say, we really, even though this might cost the town a little bit more, we'd be greener and cleaner, and ultimately the environment would be better. I think they would really attempt to expand, which is why, to Councilor Laffin's point of putting some guardrails on it, I don't necessarily disagree with them. If they were to come back and say, listen, we really want to get broad, we could, as the council, say your charge is supposed to be more or less in between these lines, a little on the outside, but you're on the next street. So I agree that not given any direction or guardrailing, they would want to go farther and they would push hard.
Chris, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree.
So where does that leave us then? A charge I'm really confused. A charge limited to marketing and raising awareness of town
I
business?
think I think let's take what we used to have, basically reintroduce it. If they want to expand a little bit on it, if before they did X, Y, and Z and they want to do A and B as well, and it kind of fits somewhere close to that, okay. But if they want to get really, we want to lobby, Hartford and Washington D.C. and bring in big funds, and which would require us to, put infrastructure stuff down, then that's a little broad. And I'm not suggesting they're going to do that, but without the ability to say you can do this and you can't do that, who knows where someone might go.
So there's a specific suggestion of putting a solar panel on the gazebo, I think it was in Community Lake Park, and selling that to the Parks and Recs Commission. And that was an example of one thing that they thought would reduce the carbon footprint, but there was no thought to saving money.
Right, and so with an example like that,
Yeah.
I don't think we should be in a place where we're requiring, forcing, or over advocating. Let's put panels here. It doesn't matter what it costs, and then force someone to buy it. I think it should go.
That's
down,
going too far, I think.
Right, I think. Listen. The way that it works generically is if somebody wants to get solar panels, they get it. It goes on, they use whatever they use during the day. If we're producing more than they're using, it goes to the grid, and then at night it comes back. If we could find low cost, no cost, or marginal equal cost of putting these things on our town structures and just tossing it onto the grid, I'm okay with suggestions like that. But if it's going to cost us more money, or it's going to be a situation where it's going to be like arm twisting, I don't want that either.
Yeah. Well, I think that question was asked and answered, but Chris, I think you were on the show with Rick Hendershot, and we have had some other discussions that the town of Wallingford, or the PUC, or the ratepayers maybe should not subsidize that because the payoff just isn't there. And without running the numbers and saying, here's what the solar panels cost, this is what installation costs, this is what their hardware cost, and this is what the savings are, I suppose anyone could ask to run those numbers, and I suggest the council should before you form a new commission. It's easy to do. You write a letter,
But I've already run those numbers because I have an electric car at home, and I was tinkering with the idea.
No, I'm talking about solar panels on town
Right.
buildings.
So I have an electric car at home, and I
Yeah.
was trying to figure out. I know what I'm saving on the differential between my fuel and my electric costs. I said, I wonder what it would take me to put a system on my roof and negate my entire set of costs. It would take me, with Wallingford Electric being what it is, it would take me 4 years longer than the three-quarter life on the panels right now. So right now, it's not equitable.
Okay. Let me change the subject a little bit, and that is the context of these names. Gina Morgenstein came forward with some names that she wanted, or she was advocating, to be put on the committee. One of those names is probably the future chair of the Democratic Town Committee. I mean, that's probably what it is. How can you not, especially coming shortly after the Jared Liu campaign, where he had a lot of, I think, unresearched thoughts about energy and solar panels, and then, this highly political name comes forward. How could one not suspect that a committee like this may be more interested in making a political statement than it is in saving a few dollars here and there? And Jason, that's more of a challenge to you.
I guess I like to look at everything face value. I can't say no, you're wrong, because you might not be wrong. But I look at it until that bridge gets crossed. I have to keep it as neutral. I assume, because I mean, people have made the same comments about myself, things that I do. Well, you're doing it because you're politically involved. I might be doing it because I care, or I'm committed to it, or I'm just passionate about it. So while I can't say the argument is out of bounds, I would have to say, listen, at this point, I'm treating her like a resident of the town who's committed to these types of activities of being environmentally sound type individual, because that's the way I understand her. And I would assume, until she starts executing differently, that that's the way she's entering it.
So, Chris Chartel, then if the committee was formed and staffed as proposed by Gina Morgenstein, is there a risk that eventually someone would come to the microphone during public question and answer during a council meeting and try to beat the mayor up with the findings of the Wallingford Energy Conservation Commission and say, we wanted you to buy solar panels and put them on the ball fields, and you ignored our recommendations, and you just disregarded us, and you appointed us, and now you're paying absolutely no attention? There's no risk that I'm exaggerating a little bit, but there's no risk that this sort of politicizing it wouldn't happen?
No, I think there's a risk, and
Yeah.
that's why I said I would not vote for it last night as it was represented. For that was one of the reasons, and I agree with Jason. I don't want to. They are passionate about the cause, but my fear is, or how about in October of 2021, when we're on the eve of the next election, and you're running for mayor, and and against Cervoni, and and they release some report. On October, 20th.
Sure, why not?
And it's the commit. So that's why I would say let's have a balanced commission, so we avoid. And goes back to our ethical discussions, the appearance of impropriety, so that no one can, because they are passionate. We don't want that interfering in their mission, and they shouldn't want it either. So yeah, I do think that crossed my mind.
Okay, so as I read the statutes and as I did my research, minority representation is required on this commission, despite what Ben Martin said in his presentation. If there's any doubt about it, the law department should issue an opinion. But there has to be some Republicans on there, according to my reading of the statute, to satisfy that statute. After there was great urging to go forward appointing this commission, Mary Mashinsky popped up and made a recommendation. Bruce, are you ready on the key on that video? So Mary Mashinsky proposed a bipartisan, nonpartisan commission, which I don't think was even contemplated by the members, by Gina Morgenstein and those in the audience. But here's what Mary Mashinsky said. 3, 2, 1, hit it, Bruce.
And I'm thinking here what the best thing might be to do is to not vote tonight, but come up with a bipartisan group of people. And that way you will know it's a nonpartisan commission and that everybody's interest is served. At the state legislature, we do have a bipartisan clean energy caucus, and both parties participate in it, and we come up with best ideas we can to save the state money, especially through energy efficiency, which is how our committee saved the most money for Wallingford. It was through energy efficiency measures, which were substantial. So maybe what you could do is hold off on the vote tonight and come up with a set of folks from each party so that you'll feel it's a nonpartisan or bipartisan commission. And then they can go to work to do this task for the town. There are more than half the towns in Connecticut have a commission like this, and Republican towns and Democratic towns. And they put their best ideas forward with sometimes talking with consultants or with other towns. And by that way, good ideas spread from town to town.
And that's pretty much where we ended up going, where the motion was at that point, because Mary had not heard what the motion was. The motion at that point was to create the commission and with no members, because you remember that was what the actual motion was. So in a way, even if we had voted on it, we were basically doing. She was saying, let's not vote tonight, and let's bring it back another time with members from both. And we were actually just voting. The motion was to establish the commission. It would have been established if it had passed, and then appoint members on another night.
Okay.
And so ultimately it was tabled, so nothing happened. But I mean, if we get to that another time, then we could maybe do both, because we'll be doing both pieces.
Right.
Chris.
Yeah, and I think she came late. I don't recall exactly when she walked in, but when I heard her, I think she, as a legislator, read the tea leaves. I don't know how much she heard, but I think it was clear to her, if there's a vote, it's going to fail.
Yeah.
So let's not have a vote, which I think was smart.
So under I'm going to call it the Mashinsky plan, and all I know is, what I saw at the meeting, and this is most of her clip. The clip has most of her comments. Supposing the proposal was to have a Wallingford Energy Conservation Commission of 8 people, 4 Republicans and 4 Democrats. Is that a good idea, Jason?
There'd be no tiebreaker.
No tiebreaker.
I don't know. I would rather see it
Okay,
be not.
5 Republicans, 4 Democrats.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, I think it was Councilor Tata that brought it up, that just like when we do things like the charter revision, everybody gets to pick a representative.
9 of us.
Yeah, 9 of us.
Yeah.
Everybody nominates one person, and that way there's 9. That way there's a vote. That
Okay.
way there's a tiebreaker.
So 5 Republicans,
Actually,
4
it would be-
Democrats.
It would be 6-3, basically. If
Well,
we did
depending.
that.
Yeah,
way, yeah.
depending. But something like that
Yeah.
would be okay with you?
Yeah, I mean,
And-
I would actually challenge Craig Fishbein, because he wasn't there, so I get to pick on him.
Yeah.
He'd have to be someone. He'd have to find the person that was unaffiliated. That way, it could be what would it be? It would be 5-3-1.
5-3-1.
5-3-1.
And you would agree with that?
Yeah, we talked about, we used the example of the Charter Commission.
Yeah.
That's what we did for Charter.
So just a little history, then I want to move on to another subject. In the first couple of years of the first Wallingford Energy Conservation Commission, one of the reasons why it was able to achieve a lot of stuff in a short period of time is that the Board of Ed was willing to work with that commission. I'm not saying the town of Wallingford was that willing, but without cooperation of the department heads and the Board of Ed, no Wallingford Energy Conservation Commission is going to get very far. So I think the way this was presented in my opinion, I know you've stated that you do not agree with my opinion, fair point. But the way this was presented with all Democrats, and certainly some high-profile Democrats, meaning the future chair probably of the Democratic Town Committee, without consultation for the Republicans, without any provision for minority or even majority representation, it got off to a bad start. And then the rationale was the PUC is too busy to do what we want to do. And again, broad aspirational reduce the carbon footprint suggestions. It wasn't that specific, but it was there. That this was not a good start, and if the council wants to go forward with this, it's got to save it, in my view, just in my view. Unless you have something you got to say, I'd rather change the subject. But
I'm good.
You good with that? Whew, I got the last word. Whew, I didn't think you guys would let me do that. Jason, I want to go to you on this one. I think it was back in December, something appeared in the paper that Councilor Morgenstein asked the Board of Ed to itemize separately for the benefit of the council insurance costs that the Board of Ed had. I'm not sure what insurance is referred to, and building and maintenance budget to be itemized separately. Presumably, and the Record Journal article believed it too, that this was to take advantage of the Ashlar Village tax settlement, which was well litigated in the recent campaign. But as we all know, Ashlar Village pays a portion of the tax bill related to general government only, not the part of the tax bill attributable to the Board of Ed. Have I characterized it fairly?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you want to give like the 30-year history in 30 seconds, I mean, the reality is they were exempt. They didn't have to pay anything. And then there was discussion on, well, this part of the business you do, this part of the business you don't. So this was going back and forth, that ultimately they could have ended up paying maybe nothing. So there was an agreement, and the original agreement was that, as you mentioned, that they would pay the administrative side of the budget and not the Board of Ed side. But the argument always comes back today that was back when it was pretty even. It was, a 48-52 split, a 46-54 split. It's a 70-30 split now with the Board of Ed side being 70% of the budget. So in theory, even though taxes have gone up, their payments have probably at least gone sideways. Maybe they've trickled upwards, but nowhere near what everybody else's has. So the only problem with that is in order to make a full argument or a full assessment of whether we really should go back down and bite on this bone.
I just need to clarify.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I need to clarify so our viewers don't lose you. The point of this data is to transfer expenses from the Board of Ed, reducing their budget, adding it to the town budget, so that Ashlar Village pays more as a result of that reallocation.
Because the argument piece would be, these are buildings. The Board of Ed doesn't own the buildings. The town owns the buildings. And right now, there's this one agreement that's affecting that group doesn't pay for town buildings because we've got it in the wrong place. That's the argument.
That's the argument.
If we take it out of the Board of Ed budget and put it into the town budget where it belongs, then what we've got is a situation where they're paying their proper portion of taxes based on the fact that the buildings are owned by the town, and that's what we agreed to.
Well, where it belongs is a judgment call. That's an opinion.
Because when the agreement was hammered out, that was there. So you could almost make the argument as the association and say, look, when we agreed to this, those buildings were always part of the BOE. Now you want to extract them out, put them over here. That makes us pay for it. We didn't agree to that. We agreed the administrative side of the budget. So if you're going to start tinkering with it, you really have to do is you have to step all the way back and go, if we could do everything we wanted to do and pull everything out that you could legitimately or marginally make an argument belongs on the town administrative side for the accidental purposes of making sure that they pay their share of it, what is really the bottom line? If it's too small, it's not worth opening that can of worms, because they could go back and say, listen, we want to renegotiate this whole thing, or we want to go back and make another argument.
So I want to get to your bottom line before I get to Chris's bottom. Based on what you know now, are you in favor of transferring those costs, the insurance cost and building maintenance cost, from Board of Ed to Town Council to game the Ashlar Village agreement? Are you in favor of that, yes or no?
With the information that I have right now, no, because I don't have enough information.
Chris, your thoughts?
No, I have a question.
Yeah.
The insurance part throws me. What insurance? Are we talking health insurance?
It's unclear.
It's unclear. Or building insurance?
It might be like property.
That's
I'm
property.
thinking property insurance.
Okay.
But I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. Because the health insurance, that would be a horrible mistake, because the town and the board have to be together for health. That we get a better deal that way.
Right.
To separate, they'd both pay more. Okay. My fear is that we went through this with CMEC. So one of the things with CMEC, one of the arguments against the CMEC lawsuit was, why did we do it? We should have known better. It was too risky. And I know there were other arguments about how it was actually litigated, but that was an argument. Why do we do it? Well, this would seem to open up a similar risk, would it not? That if we go down this path, they could challenge it, and they could end up paying nothing. Because I thought it was some kind of settlement that was made. So to me, it seems too risky. And to Jason's point, what would the effect, if we did everything that Councilor Morgenstein wanted, what would that effect be of spreading out those dollars? How much would it lessen the average taxpayer's tax bill? A few dollars? I mean, I don't know what the.
Well, right. If it transferred $50,000 worth of tax liability, to the average homeowner, that's $2.
Yeah,
Right. So is that worth
it'd be utterly forgettable unless it's a real big.
versus if they pay? What if they pay not? But is that worth poking the bear and having them initiate a lawsuit, and then what if they win and they pay not? They end up paying nothing.
Let me change the subject on you. Something completely different. One of the issues you guys took up last night was whether or not the town council should rebid the auditor's contract. The same auditor has been auditing the town's books since, I think, 2004. It's been the same firm. My research indicates a little different results than what was presented at the meeting that you guys were at. I don't think it's ever gone out for any sort of a competitive bid since that time, whether an RFP or whatever. I think it's just been renewed, bid waived, bid extended, bid renewed. But subject to the research, that may come later, I checked with town sources, and that's the information I got. So for the first time in that time, it's about 16 years, it's going to go out to bid. Chris, I want to go to you and then to Jason. You were in favor of bidding this, and my question, but before you answer, I want to explain the bid. My question is, what were you trying to accomplish, if anything, by putting it out to bid? And the bid is not what many viewers might think it is. It's not the lowest price wins at all. It's not that at all. The same auditor could come in, would come in with two envelopes, one with his qualifications and one with his price. And someone, probably the comptroller, would interview the auditor to see his qualifications. And our existing auditor should have qualifications that would blow us out of the water. We've been there for 16 years with this auditor, so of course he's going to have excellent credentials. And other competitors would come in. And then the qualifications of these other auditing firms are ranked probably by Jim Bowes or others that he appoints. Jim Bowes has undoubtedly had, a relationship, a favorable relationship. I think that was expressly stated at your council meeting. Then the price envelopes are opened up, and there's a complicated formula to see who is the ultimate winner. So it's not the lowest price wins by any stretch. What were you trying to accomplish by sending it out to bid?
Well, I think it's never a good thing when the town is with the same vendor for that extended period of time and doesn't explore other options.
Why?
For the very you because you want.
I'm trying to lay the trap for you.
You just laid the
trying
trap,
to lay the
and
trap.
I'm gonna fall because you always want to.
I put the bait in there.
You want a fresh set of eyes to look at what's going on. You want first before you get to that point, though. You want to know who else is out there. You want to know, because oftentimes we hear, no one else can do it. They know the town best, but if you don't look, you don't know. So if you don't,
In 2017, Jimbo said there were either 2 or 3 or 3 or 4. I think it's 3 or 4 in the minutes of 2017.
Okay.
So I think that's consistent with what he said.
So to your point, so the first step for me it was let's get it out to bid. Let's have that. They're asking us. They're coming to us for guidance to say, do you want us to put it out to bid or not?
But what? But I need more succinctly.
Yeah.
What were you trying to accomplish by having it go out to a bid in the?
Just to have them explore who else could do it. Because I don't want to hear, no one else can do it. No one else is qualified. I want to know that you looked at other people and you picked the best for the job.
So,
now, to your point, you're saying they're going to rig the system.
No, I'm not saying they're going to rig the system.
Bose is going to score it.
No. Be careful how you use words.
Okay.
What I'm saying is judging credentials is very subjective.
I know.
Right.
Okay.
And that's not the same as rigging the system. So I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying our current auditor has to score very high.
By virtue of being the current auditor.
By virtue of being, Jason, what did you want?
Well, I've always pushed back against bids, bid waivers and such. I mean, as a matter of fact, I got to the point where I just told the chair, I go, look, we get that list. I said, I'm not gonna vote yes on the consent agenda because of everything that's here. I look at it like there's definitely an advantage to having someone who knows you, knows your stuff, knows your business, knows how you work, because they're going to provide you the best business. But and I've used this technology example before. Let's say I do all the technology for this studio, right? And then it's supposed to go out to bid, but I say, listen, I not only can I do the same cost that you did last year, I can even cut it by $2,000, and everybody's happy. Like, oh, great, it's going to cost us less. And then another 3-year term comes up and I can hold costs, get you more equipment, and cut it another $2,000.
I want to get to the bottom line before we run out of time.
Right. The point that I'm trying to make is
Yeah.
going back to, if you don't go out to bid, you don't know that the market price actually dropped by 50%.
How would you feel if, when the bids are open and the contract awarded, Bloom Shapiro, the current auditor, has won the bid by virtue of $75,000 per year under the next bidder? Would you feel this is not really the result you wanted, that a new set of eyes was actually worth something to you, or it had no weight?
Well, the way I would look at that is, number one, we just saved the town $75,000.
Yeah.
And I would also look at it, the fact that I know that from discussion, they bring a new set of eyes, even though it's the same group, that they rotate their junior auditors. So every 3 years, there's different people looking at it from the same firm, but there's different people. So they may work to the same guidelines as the firm, but it's still different sets of eyes. And I like to believe that if there's a different auditor looking at it, they're going to see something differently than the other auditor that looked at it the last 3 years.
You're quite an optimist in my view, my humble opinion. Chris?
Okay, but but your point about the fresh eyes. I mean, Bloom Shapiro is a reputable company.
Sure.
They have their own reputation on the line when they correct.
but-
So I mean, to make the point, a fresh set of eyes. I mean, they're looking at our finances. They're applying it against general accounting practices. I mean, this is accounting. This isn't like a movie critic or something. I mean, there are very finite rules around this from a reputable company. So I don't know. It's not like scoring diving in the Olympics where you get a different judge. And I feel like it's this process of the process of the audit is not subjective. So I guess what is it that a fresh set of eyes would uncover?
Well, let me just
that
add
would,
add some detail, and then I kind of want to move on, but we don't have to if you want to stay with it. The notion of auditor rotation is firmly ingrained in the business world all across the world. The value of auditor rotation, one auditor stays with one firm for only so long. Because another firm could be a little stricter, they could be a little looser, but the idea is that the administration always, the town administration and businesses always have to be on their toes for a stranger that comes in, and they don't know where that stranger is going to look or how they're going to look. The town knows exactly where the auditor is going to look, because even though apparently, Jason, you're easily satisfied, well, it's going to be a new junior auditor or a new senior partner. It's the same firm. And so I value the auditor rotation at some point, not necessarily 6 years, which according to my reading is standard in some areas, could be 10 years or 12 years. But the notion is that an auditor can be too predictable. The auditing firm can be too predictable, and the residents of the town lose by not having someone that has a slightly different approach that throws the town off balance. That auditor may find something that the other auditing firm, as a matter of policy, says that's not important, and the auditor rotation to me is easily worth $75,000. But quickly, you disagree and you disagree.
Well,
right?
I disagree because I feel like
Okay.
a different person is going to do their work differently, and they're going to catch certain things differently. That's just my thought process. Maybe I'm naive about that, and I'm looking too short-sighted at saving $75,000. But
we both work for large companies, though.
Yeah.
So we both understand at a large, company, because we're both very, we're modern and stuff. That at large companies, there's a lot of diversity. And it's not a homogeneous thing. You can get two different people from my company or from your company that do things totally differently just because we have the same name on our badge. So I think you're underrating that.
I think you're both too easily satisfied with the same auditor in perpetuity, forever, because that's the logical extension of your argument. Keep the same auditor forever. No,
not
forever.
if there was a lower bid.
Well,
Yeah.
they can easily underbid somebody. I mean, let's change the subject a little bit, and we're going to have to watch our time now as we go through the topic. So we're coming into budget season. Jason, we're going to go to you first. Do you have your eye on anything that you want to take up, discuss, change?
I really would like us to start tightening up the play that's in all of the different line items, and I would like to.
The play, you mean?
I think there's a lot of looseness in, we need to bring in this much money. We're going to end up spending this much money. We've allocated for headcount that we're not going to hire right away, which ends up leaving a buffer. I've never liked that in the first place. The second thing that I've had problems with is when we've been in an advantageous position, and I'm gonna pick on the pension fund. We have a line item that we're going to collect a certain amount in taxes, earmark it for something like the pension, and then because of the way that people retire, people are not hired. We're collecting pension dollars for positions that are not filled. Therefore, we don't need to commit the funds. When the line item is paid, there's money left over. It was collected and taxed with the idea of, in my example, to fund the pension with X number of dollars. We ended up with whatever, $300,000 more. We're only 72% funded. Why not take what those funds were collected for in the first place, and even if it's an overcommitting based on, general accounting practices, because they say you only need 72%, who cares that it goes to 73? We collected it for that purpose, put it into that fund. I want to see more direct, if the money was brought in for that, put it aside for that. Stop shoveling it into the general fund and letting it sit there.
That's one example, and I want to take that over to Chris and rephrase the issue a little bit. It's been stated in the past that the pension, which is now really a big expense, it's a real big expense of the budget. The pension is funded as if the town were 100% staffed, even though we know in advance it's never 100% staffed. So extra money is baked in to the pension budget. And you raise that with the mayor and the comptroller, they go ballistic. Let's supposing, hypothetically, Jason raises this issue and goes through, as I've done and I'm sure he has done, year after year after year, all the money left over, and the truth is brought out and laid on the table. But you're on the right side of the aisle, we know what that means, maybe we don't. How would you deal with that argument that Jason just raised?
Yeah, I understand. I think you raised it my first year in the college.
Yeah, and it got voted down.
It got voted down. You went after health insurance too. That was I didn't really pay attention to the pension part. I just paid attention to the health insurance part because I felt more comfortable talking about health insurance. Well, there's also, and you just said this, not only there's extra built into this, just the salary line for the same reason. And I actually brought it up with the mayor last year privately when I was trying to find money for the pool, because I was going to pull it from, I needed $50,000. I was going to pull it from there because there was like $500,000. And I'm like, and he was very adamant that, we found the money elsewhere. But so I think, I don't know is the answer to your question. And I'll leave it at I don't know, because I voted no 4 years ago. So now I'm at I don't know. I have to look at the numbers. But I do think there's money, if not in the pension, it is in the pension, but in the salary line, just the basic salary line, for the same reason. We funded 100%. We know that it's a 1,200 people work for the town and board. It's never at full employment. There's extra there too. So we have to look at it.
Well, I'm not sure what to take from this. Should we, the viewers, expect a little more pushback from the right side of the aisle and the left side of the aisle on these expenses, which we know are overstated, admittedly overstated?
I think that as you've watched the council I can't speak to, the other side, to them. I can't speak to them. But I think that Councilor Marone is somebody to watch.
We've watched him.
If you watched last night.
Oh, keep going though.
Joe, Craig is Craig. Craig's always, Craig dies on every hill. But Councilor Marone, is not, and I've been over the years, I've not as much as the two of them, but I've questioned some things. So, and we have a new counselor who has, Christina, who comes from a business background and who I think has a different perspective as well. So I think maybe, but I'm not gonna. We'll have to see how it plays out.
So the next 8 minutes is devoted to Jason and the school bus issue. We didn't leave enough time for it, but you guys were wordier than I thought you were going to be. This was in the news at least a couple of times. There's an editorial on the school bus issue, at least one editorial in the Record Journal. There was what we liked and I think what we didn't like or something. And we had Tammy Raccio on the show a little while ago, and I asked Tammy to describe the problem, and she said that it started last spring. And what is the problem? The problem is, apparently, school bus drivers are sometimes hard to come by, and school bus routes get doubled up, and as a result, kids wait, buses are late, parents are frustrated. And then it sort of came to a head when Jason posted online around January 3 in Facebook. and brought it to a boil. And Jason, I'm sort of stealing your thunder, but I take notes. And then it came to a boil, and suddenly the Board of Ed got on it. Jason, take it away. Now you got about 7 minutes to sort of.
Yeah, so I asked as a parent. My son had gotten doubled up a couple of days in a row, and I started to think about it. And I go, I think he was doubled up in December too, and maybe 1 or 2 times in November. I go, let me just see let me ask some other parents. So I went to the Concerned Parents Facebook page, which I help moderate. It's not I have other admins that are on that page too. And I just posted the question. I go, I explain what happened. Is this happening elsewhere? Is it maybe just isolated, just me? Well, floodgates opened once I asked the question, and it was happening all over the place. And I got a lot of information. And I think what was interesting to me is I got a lot of information that I don't know was shared with other people because, hey, listen, I want to tell you this, but I'm a para. Hey, I want to tell you this, but I drive for the company. Hey, I want to tell you this, but I'm concerned about this, that, and the other thing. And there were a lot of people that didn't want their name tied to it, but they were willing to share stuff with me privately. And this has gone, it was well beyond an occasional thing. I mean, when you've got parents that maybe take a half day from work, come home early to bring Johnny to the doctor, and the bus is running late. Now they miss the appointment. That's a problem. When Jane is waiting in the morning for the bus to come, and then she's got to go to work, and the bus isn't showing up because it's running 20 minutes late, puts the kid in the car and they drive him to school. It's a problem because now the school's all jammed up. Moses White Beach is a monstrosity to try to drive around that time of day. And so on. So the end result is, well, let's try to figure out what's going on here. And it's not the drivers per se. There's a lot of dedicated drivers, and I think that was a sensitivity issue. Everybody was concerned like we were picking on the drivers. I wasn't picking on anybody. I wanted a problem solved. And there were definitely things that Durham maybe wasn't doing correctly. You can't have just enough bus drivers. I mean, if you have 50 routes and 50 drivers, that's going to be a problem. Anytime somebody's sick, anytime a bus breaks down, anytime somebody's car breaks down on the way from work, whatever the story might be, they weren't staffed right. The argument of, gee, it's happening all over the place, okay, great. It's a great problem to have, 3.5% unemployment, but at the same time, if everybody's got this problem, there are other companies that are handling it better. What are they doing so that they're not impacted as much or as hard? There are definitely things that Durham wasn't doing, or I didn't believe Durham was, or I couldn't see. And I didn't know if the Board of Ed was even engaged on this because...
Do you know now?
Well, I do know now.
How do you know?
Well, I know because after I started asking questions and I started making phone calls, again, initially as a parent, they started to tell me, well, we have been talking with them, but it's been, a little bit of back and forth.
Is this in December?
Well, no, in January.
Oh, that's too late for me.
Yeah, no.
That's too late for me.
I'm telling you,
because you posted in January 3.
Right.
So I want to know pre-January 3.
I assumed it was just random, once in a while thing. Didn't know there was a problem.
Any evidence that the Board of Ed was engaged pre-January 3?
No, I didn't know. Doesn't mean that they weren't. It means I didn't know.
Okay.
And I don't know everything. I mean, there's definitely things that get past me. I'm very busy. I've got 4 kids. I've got a job that makes me fly all over the place, so I can't be tuned into everything. So I even after I posted, I only had one Board of Education member reach out directly to me within the first week to say, hey, listen, if you've got a couple of minutes, I'd like to talk to you about this because we have had a discussion or two, but this was, again, after I put the post up. So, I mean, I don't know what I don't know.
Chris Shortell, I made comments, I think you were here with me, that the Board of Ed, maybe I didn't make them specifically, but I will now. Based on when reading the paper, based on my interview with Tammy Ratcho, based on what Jason had just said, it seems that the Board of Ed came to the party late, and only after Jason blew the whistle, which shows the value of going public with a problem if there's a perception that town officials are doing some foot dragging, not taking it seriously enough, not addressing it with the urgency that matches the parents' frustration. Your thoughts on my comments?
I agree with your comments, and I applaud Jason for what he did. It's...
So why didn't a board member do what Jason did?
I think that we often talk on the council, you accuse us, not necessarily... Well, you accuse all of us sometimes of being too...
It's my job.
Too passive.
Of
we
course.
Let the mayor do everything.
And you are. Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Think, with all due respect, I think there's a similar thing maybe on the Board of Ed a little bit with the superintendent. and this isn't it's an observation. I was on the Board of Ed. It's more of you have a very dynamic leader, and these are your priorities. This is what you're working on: mastery-based learning, the science, the Space Center at Fritz, and this sort of thing is not something maybe that's going to be on an agenda. It should be item 1A. Maybe it's not going to be. But I think that to Jason's credit, and I'm not a big social media person really, and this is an example where that's a shortcoming as a public official, because you basically accessed the hive mind of Facebook and made something happen. And it's a real problem. We talk about on this show we bid waivers and CAFRs and that's all fine, but this was a real problem, like you said. I mean, my kids were affected too, and so I think that it's all about advocacy and awareness, and I think that what you did brought it, and hopefully by shaking the tree, it forced some things that maybe otherwise wouldn't have happened.
So I have a question, and I need each of you to answer in about 20 seconds or we'll run out of time. Jason, would you have preferred to have seen the board or a couple of board members be stronger advocates publicly before you posted, or is their culture okay?
I think they may be used to doing things the way they do them. I am completely unorthodox about many things that I do, and if I feel like something needs to be discussed and put out in the open, and then even if it needs to be addressed separately and quietly, that's fine as long as it gets fixed.
Chris, your response to my comment. Has the Board of Ed been too reluctant to come out publicly in a timely way?
Well, I don't know so I don't know if there's parents. I mean, I'm trying to think of who's on the Board of Ed that as you said, you're a parent. If you weren't a parent, would you have done what you did?
They all run as being parents. They all run, or not all of them, but most of them run. I'm a parent. I'm in the school system, and then this happens, and it takes a non-board member to go public, and that gets the action. And I'm saying, where was the Board of Ed on this?
Right, understood. On this issue, you're right. I'm not going to broad brush the Board of Ed on one issue. That they're like this all the time. It's one issue. On this issue, it took a counselor with 4 kids to make something happen. But on other issues, I mean, Tammy's an example. There's not a bigger advocate than Tammy Raccio. So, and neither, we have a lot of others on the board like that too. So I'm not going to broad brush them like that, even though you're trying to bait me. Lawyer.
Guilty. Jason, thanks for coming on the
Thanks for having
show. Time really flew. We had about 5 or 6 more topics we wanted to get your thoughts on. The only solution to that, the only remedy, is you got to come back and not wait. We got to do it sooner.
I'm traveling locally the next 6 weeks. So.
All right, there you go. But thanks for coming on the show, and viewers, thank you for watching the Citizen Mike Show. The Citizen Mike Show is on WPAA at 9 o'clock on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and Thursday and Friday at 9 o'clock. Find it on YouTube. Go to the Citizen Mike Wallingford channel. Follow all the prompts. You can get it. I can send you an email. You just let me know through the studio that you want me to email you a link right to the YouTube production. We'll do that. And thanks again. Good night, everybody. And thanks to Jason Zandri. Thanks to Bruce Haig in the booth, the guy that makes us look good. Bruce, thanks. Good night.